Although some might be slightly underwhelmed with some of the new coaching moves made by Mike Gundy, I personally appreciate that he clearly has the need for an SEC and NFL style of D.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 back in bonus bets. All you have to do is win your first $5 bet. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of new defensive coordinator Todd Grantham and a new defensive line coach, Ryan Osborn. And we might as well throw in new linebacker coach Kap Dede into this conversation as well. I personally am a very big fan of these pickups. Now, we'll talk more about the offensive staff and that side of the ball a little bit later on, but this strategically, to me, fits a need that we have always had in Stillwater, America. And the understanding that Mike Gundy clearly, seemingly, is going to relinquish a lot of the defensive controls and give it over to somebody like a Todd Grantham spells a lot of relief if you're an Oklahoma State Cowboy football fan. We're not too far removed from the 2021 defense, which was arguably the greatest of all time in Stillwater, America. So seeing that go further and further away, of course, it's been frustrating. Now, if you talk to a decent number of the players, I think they would all synonymously agree that a massive overhaul kind of needed to happen simply because there was a lot of complacency that was taking place. But now that is out of the way, we can talk about these strategic hires. As it pertains to Todd Grantham, right, he's got almost a dozen years of experience coaching defensive linemen in the NFL. So clearly he's going to know what it takes, how to get there, and from a technical standpoint, what you need to do in your maturation processes to, increase your abilities and increase your paychecks. And then he also has a significant amount of SEC experience. Now, if you look back to all of these guys, they pretty much all have a connection going back to the days of Louisville pre-2016, then to Mississippi State. And then Dan Mullen had a crew of all these guys kind of together. Matter of fact, if you go back and look at some of the 2017 Mississippi State practice film stuff, there's a lot of clips of the defensive unit being coached by Grantham, and Ryan Osborn's out there holding the pads and helping the guys, manipulate around the trenches, essentially. And then you have this connection, obviously, with Ryan Osborn, who also, again, has that time at Mississippi State. They all went together, essentially, to Florida. And then if you're a Florida fan, right, the terminology third and Grantham comes up quite often, but even that is a little bit disingenuous. He had a couple of defenses. He had like the number 6 or 7 defense in America, and then he also had a number 10 defense in America. He also had a couple really lackluster, bottom 50, number 73 type defenses. So it's a hit and miss style of situation when you talk to Florida fans. But even in those years where they were 45th and 73rd or whatever, they were one of the tops in the SEC in tackles for loss and sacks and getting in the backfield and causing a lot of disruption. Third down, obviously, was an issue that Florida fans will continue to bring up. But then you dig back a little bit deeper. Mississippi State fans think this is a massive home run for Oklahoma State. They've been missing Todd Grantham for years now, and they wish that he would have potentially given some more opportunities at one point in time. But then he took, his job back to the NFL. Again, you've got to add in that almost 12 years of experience, most recently coming from the New Orleans Saints. And when he was there, he dramatically increased their defensive capabilities. He also has those SEC ties to Georgia as well. So it's not just Florida. It's not just Mississippi State. It's not even just going back to Louisville, even though that's where that connections all seems to stem from. 2016, 2017 range is when Todd Grantham, Ryan Osborn, Kap Dede, and there's another defensive individual that I think we're going to have the opportunity to potentially get as well. They all coached together. They went together at Florida, and then they all kind of went their own separate ways. The beauty with Todd Grantham specifically is most of his time has been with the defensive line. It's been in a multitude of levels, and he's coached in the SEC system. He even went back to the Alabama Nick Saban retraining program, and now we're seeing this carry out itself in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And you already are seeing the dividends being paid by having an almost exclusive NFL SEC style of staff that we've put together. And then you got to talk about Ryan Osborn. Ryan Osborn comes to us from Charlotte, but before that, he was with the Baltimore Ravens. Before that, he was a Michigan as a defensive analyst, but not just any analyst. There was an article written not too long ago about how he was integral in the improvements from a technical aspect from Aiden Hutchinson. And there was a linebacker from Michigan as well that also got drafted. He got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson's story getting drafted by the Lions so high up, it's a big deal. That helped kind of catapult his name even more so. But he goes back to that old school bang your head style of system. Now, Todd Grantham does rub people the wrong way sometimes because of how old school he is. But I think if you're looking at Oklahoma State now as a place where you can get SEC coaching and get a ticket to the NFL much quicker than anticipated at a traditional Big 12 school, then you're going to have plenty of opportunities to jump on it. And this is going to be another opportunity for us. And then you also have Kap Dede. Kap Dede is another one of those coaches that they all kind of work together. He's also bounced around between a bunch of SEC schools, between a linebacker coach, cornerback coach, nickelback coach, Florida, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Louisville. And then he also has a little bit of that pedigree, right, that you're looking for, that clearly Todd Grantham has designated as a priority. It is clearly a priority to get the NFL side or the defensive side of the ball full of NFL guys that know what it takes to get to that level. They also have a decent mixture of older guys and younger guys, right? So you're going to see that Mike Gundy, Todd Grantham, and Todd Monken, which will not Todd Monken, but Doug Meacham, we'll talk about later. All of those individuals are like 58, 59, almost 60 years old. But then you have guys like Kap Dede and Ryan Osborn that are in the younger category that do have the NFL experience, that do have years under SEC coaching staffs at multiple different stops. This is an emphasis clearly by Mike Gundy to turn the defense into more of an NFL model. And we clearly have brought in the guys from a coaching perspective that can do that, both from a technical standpoint, but also in the recruiting landscape. Oklahoma State, the biggest deficiency, in my personal opinion, this season was in the trenches. Both D-line and O-line were the biggest deficiency we had. Did we have issues at other positions? Absolutely, right? You could talk about the issues we had at quarterback or potentially just the stubbornness behind sticking with Alan Bowman for so long. But nonetheless, even if you look beyond that, the O-line, D-line, they needed some help. But the crazy part was we know we've got some guys, right? We had the same offensive lineman group returning. We had a lot of the same defensive lineman group returning. And for some reason, it was more of a regression than an improvement from the previous season. So when you have that type of regression, when you know you've got some guys that physically and athletically can do it at the level because they just proved it the year before and they've proved it at other stops, those same individuals, they didn't magically lose talent. Could they have lost some motivation? Yeah. If your coaches have a tendency of playing favorites because of their seniors and they require the least amount of babysitting and training, then that does become slightly infectious and that could create issues. And if the players that are hanging around right now understand that there was some of that going on last year, and the ones that are sticking around are not batting an eye about the total rebuild, to me, it indicates that they knew this was a necessity and they knew that some kind of shakeup needed to happen. Now, I don't know that they could have even anticipated that it would be a shakeup to this degree, nor would it be a shakeup that would equal a multitude of NFL coaches that also have, almost equal amount of time, if not more, at the SEC level as well. For as much as I don't want to give the SEC a bunch of credit here, I mean, you got to call a spade, give credit where credit is due. If you're trying to produce defensive linemen, you have to look at the SEC model because that is what the NFL typically looks at. So now we have multiple pieces of that are already showing us in the recruiting transfer portal landscape. We're getting guys to Stillwater to at least take visits that we haven't always been able to get in on. That is because the NFL pedigree that Mike Gundy in this defense under Todd Grantham, Ryan Osborn, and Kap Dede are going to be able to put forth now. Finally, in Stillwater, America, we're going to have some NFL flavor to it. Speaking of NFL flavor, there's a lot of individuals that are going to be doing their darndest to try to get to the NFL as quickly as possible. Now that we have the college football playoff right around the corner, that time is now. The college football playoff is, of course, back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it is guaranteed to be bigger, badder, and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, SMU taking on Penn State. That'll be at noon, followed by the Clemson Tigers trying to take down the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Do not miss out on your opportunity to get the first 12-team format playoff underway and watch a lot of these guys prepare for their NFL journey. Go check it out. Whenever it gets kicked off, you're not going to want to miss this playoff action. From the playoffs to some needs. As you guys all recently have seen, Chandler Morris did visit Oklahoma State. There was some, obviously some mutual interest, but he ended up taking the big paycheck at Virginia, who's going to pay him a little over $1 million. And then there was John Mateer, the quarterback coming out of Washington State, who turned down $1 million from Washington State to stay there because he wants to expand his potential options as well. So that seems to be the going rate right now for a top-tier quarterback in the transfer portal, or at least that's some of the conversations that is being had. Now, I don't know from a financial aspect how close we're willing to get to that $1 million, but I think it would be crazy for us to assume that we don't have the financial capabilities to do so. I've even heard it floated around that we could potentially have the ability to get fairly close to that if need be at the quarterback position. Now, obviously, you're going to have a question of, is there going to be a whole lot of quarterbacks out there still yet that are worth that amount of money when Oklahoma State has so many glaring needs outside of that? Just like we talked about, the end of segment one there was a lot of things that you could have pinpointed last year as a potential massive issue. O-line, D-line, of course, the quarterback limitations were obviously a problem. There was a hesitancy to put Gunner or Garrett Rangel in the game. Now, once that did happen against BYU, we did see an expanded offense, but then he obviously tried to stiff arm the turf and broke his clavicle, and he ended up in a downtrodden position. You have Zane Flores also in somewhat of a downtrodden position, having to have surgery as well. Then we had to fall back on Milo Iake-Smith, but we should have been playing Milo Iake-Smith much earlier on, just like we should have been playing Garrett Rangel much earlier on. But if you take that aside, if you fix the O-line and the D-line, then even Alan Bowman is likely far more serviceable than we thought physically possible. The problem, I believe, was Alan Bowman didn't have an overabundance of time, and when he did have some time, he got happy feet because he has a tendency historically to have a lot of injuries, and I'm sure that's got to weigh on you mentally, at least to some level. Aside from the complacency, outside of the offensive line and the defensive line, those have got to be the two biggest glaring needs. And again, I have some solace in the fact, or I take some solace in the fact that we've got so many NFL pedigree guys now on the defensive side of the ball that we are going to be able to attract some guys that we haven't typically been able to attract. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in segment 3. But in my personal opinion, if you still have Garrett Rangel, and you still have a now healthy Zane Flores, and you have an emerging freshman that ended up playing in an emergency but doing pretty admirably in Milo Iake-Smith, you have more than enough that if you build around that, you should be able to at least replicate what you were able to do in 2023. Even if some of 2023 might have been a little bit of a mirage, right? A little bit of a smoke and mirror show. We proved that we could do some stuff even when we don't have the maximization of talent. And I think last year we proved that you can have some of the Jimmies and the Joes, but if you don't have any of the X's and O's behind it, it is going to make it significantly more difficult. The beauty of this overhaul, both offensively and defensively from a staff perspective, is everybody's going to start with a clean slate, right? So there will be no playing favorites whatsoever because these coaches are literally all new. So there's not going to be any favorites to be played. They're going to determine who their favorites are in spring and fall. So the accountability, the work ethic, the weight gain in the offseason, did you pay attention? Did you learn the new aspects of the playbook? All of that stuff will be taken in consideration. And of course, you're going to have some opportunities in spring to narrow down the roster a little bit more. I think we should build around the 3 quarterbacks that we do currently have on the roster at this very moment, instead of trying to tinker around with potentially paying whatever, $500,000, 600, 800, whatever the case may be for a quarterback. Spend that money around the quarterbacks, right? I think that we all can see some of the transfers we've been able to bring in thus far are going to be massively beneficial to the instant restoring of order in Boone Pickens Stadium. And it should be able to happen very quickly. Let me know down in the comment section what your personal opinion is for all of you out there in YouTube country. But for me, I would like to build around these guys because I don't think that these 3 are devoid of talent. I don't know who the best is going to end up shaking out to be. But I also think that the traditional Mike Gundy mold of stick with the oldest quarterback that has all of the knowledge of the playbook and everything, that's kind of out the window. So again, this is a fresh slate for Garrett Rangel, Zane Flores, and Maluiake Smith. What they're able to do with it will set the tone for how the season goes. But to me, you could go get a high-flying, flashy quarterback. You could even spend $1 million if you really, really wanted to. But if you don't address all the other needs, then it doesn't matter. I know Grantham might be, by Florida fans, be given the nickname of Third and Grantham. But under Brian Nardo, as much as I love Nardo, and I know he was getting his wings clipped by the personnel and some of the packaging that he didn't agree with, nonetheless, our defense was a catastrophic issue. So even if the offense would have been able to produce and we wouldn't have run out the most simplistic play calling system in the Big 12 under Casey Dunn, even if that weren't the case, defensively, we weren't doing enough or we weren't able to do enough to get enough stops to win games anyways. So I think, again, this hire of Grantham and him bringing in Osborn and Kap Dede and some of the other guys that he's been able to bring in, the DBs coach, is absolutely wild. We're going to cover some of the other coaches. We've got some catching up to do. Of course, you do know this. I don't think we should spend all of that money on a quarterback when we have 3 capable quarterbacks if we can build around them. If you strengthen the O-line, and you know what we have for the most part, and some of the running backs coming back. So everybody's excited about the backfield. And from a wide receiver position, DeJon Stribling likely is going to take his talents elsewhere. We can't afford him. But I also think that Io Shotomai King is one of those people that is waiting in the wings to just pop off. I think we kind of wasted him this previous season, but I'm not going to get into a long diatribe on that. We also have Talon Shetron, right? DeJuan Lofton is coming back, or at least it's what he told the team the day before Dunn got let go, or a couple days before. So we're going to have some talent at wide receiver. We've got Gavin Freeman back as well. We've seen some of the young guys like Cam Hurd get some opportunities, which clearly indicates that they're not too far away from being available pretty quickly. And then you've also got some of the younger guys coming in, like Royal Capel and Kobe Foreman and Matrell Lopez and Jaden Perez, that are going to be able to provide a decent spark right away. Some of those guys are going to have anticipatory feelings on whether they should be able to play right away. And you also have Trey Griffiths to take into consideration. We have plenty of talent. In my opinion, wasting money on a quarterback is unnecessary when we can spend that money in other areas to lock down this team. Give the quarterbacks that we have a chance. Because even if you're not a big Garrett Rangel fan, there's no way that you can say that what Maluiake Smith did this season wasn't at least intriguing enough to get you excited about the quarterback battle coming into this season. And again, it's somewhat, the offensive side of the ball, the staff shakeups weren't as massive as the defensive side of the ball, other than Coach Wozniak. Man, that's a conversation in and of itself. So we'll actually shelf that portion of the conversation because we're going to have plenty of time to get caught back up, but we need to take this time to talk about what this all could mean about getting some big-time guys in Stillwater, America for this restoration of order, rebuild, call it what you want to call it. For restoring order in your household, you might need to check out FanDuel pretty quickly. This is going to be your opportunity to tackle the NFL action because we've got a bunch of NFL flavor in Stillwater, America now. Get with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers right now can bet $5 and get 150 bones back in bonus bets if it's a winner. When you get that tingling sensation in the middle of the game that something crazy is about to happen, it's about to flip entirely on its head, you can now check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more from the same page where you place your bets from. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com. Do not waste that tingling sensation ever again. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Get in on the action to see if our main man, Tylan Wallace, can continue to put up massive numbers. Can Tyreek Hill bust the 90-yard total range? Go find out. Go capitalize on your monetary gains today. If that is a little choosy for you, we'll give you some more than or less than action. This, you already know, is the most fun way to get into the landscape of capitalization for you. It's more than or less than. It really is that simple. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. Join over 10 million members to get signed up today. Because with over the 10 million members, PrizePicks has the daily fantasy accessibility with the more than or less than to help you win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks, America's #1 daily sports app. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your pick hits, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Get in on the action today. Download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Share your experience. Is this going to be the time where Travis Kelce gets more than 70 yards receiving and Lamar Jackson has more than 250 passing? Get in on the action, because it's better to do it with this more than or less than behind it. It takes some of the craziness out of it. PrizePicks is the bee's knees, and what you need to do to try to capitalize. More than or less than, it doesn't get better than that. Go to PrizePicks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round this thing out here with the fact that we're going to be in on some guys. Just like we were in on the conversation with Chandler Morris, and he came to Stillwater America, he decided that whatever we had to offer just wasn't quite enough. And that's okay. But you're going to have some other individuals that I think could put us in a good position. One of those coming to visit here in a few days is Justice Boone, massive defensive lineman out of Florida. And there's got to be some connections, right, at least in the recruiting realm, from Grantham and Osborn and perhaps even Kap Dede that kind of do date back to their time at Florida. At least the recruiting connections could potentially be there for Justice Boone to make sense to play in Boone Pickens Stadium. If that's not poetic justice, I'm not 100% sure what is. Because Thompson, the big defensive lineman from Wisconsin, we've got a legitimate shot at him as well. And the question is, why would we have the opportunity? Again, it's got to be because of the NFL pedigree. The opportunity to get these guys developed like you see traditionally done in the SEC, to get these guys developed in the strength and conditioning room, and then get them to the NFL. That is the key to success for anywhere you want to go. But now that we have all of these NFL coaches, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it is going to open us up to a lot of categories that I don't think we've always necessarily been in on, because there is going to be some sort of perception out there as it pertains to, Mike Gundy and the recruiting and that whole circle goes. But at the end of the day, this is going to open up some doors for us that we haven't had open for quite some time. Malik Charles. This is 6'5", 255-pound defensive end, or it might be 6'3", 255. but he runs a 4.49 40 as a defensive end. And we've already talked about Shandavian Bradley. We've talked about Jonathan Gumanu. We've talked about Tamarick Johnson. We've talked about that replacement that could potentially fall in that Colin Oliver role. We've also talked about how, Jeff Robertson might be one of the only few linebackers that are coming with some meaningful experience behind them, right? Gabe Brown is one of the handful. There's about 8 to 10 scholarship players that were asked to kind of take their talents elsewhere. And there was obviously a couple of handfuls of walk-ons that were asked to do the same. But here's the fun part of that. There are going to be some guys who are told or recommended that they should transfer or they should enter the portal that have said, no, I don't want that. I would rather come compete here in the spring, maybe not even having a roster spot to try to take somebody's scholarship. Like Yamil Talib. Yamil Talib is going to be one of those individuals that is going to be fighting in the spring to get part of that 105 spot. And I think Yamil's definitely good enough, and that's why he played as a true freshman, because he is good enough. There's going to be some prove-it moments here. But we've got some big-time guys already here, committed, signed, sealed, delivered. We've got some others coming to visit. And I think this kind of shows that there's a new time to get excited about, because there's a couple more linebackers that we need to pay attention to that could be absolutely massive. And I think what the Leon Johnsons and the Kobe Hiltons of the world have proven, you don't necessarily need to look at where they come from all the time. You need to look at some of the measurables. Okay? When somebody has 160 some odd tackles and they run a 4.49 40, they're probably worth their weight in gold. And now they're going to have that NFL development that we haven't always had, especially from the defensive side of the ball. Now, we were making a run there from the linebackers, but even that has kind of slowed down to some degree. Now that you have Nick Martin out and then you have Colin Oliver gone, there is going to be a need for this group to kind of, capitalize on their own merits. This blank slate is going to be a great thing. And I also think that it could be another factor that sets us up for some of these heavy hitters. Financially, what I've been told is we're willing to spend a decent amount in the portal, JUCO, that route. But we're not going to spend what we spent last year in retention. Now, there are going to be a decent number of players that we absolutely are going to bring back. But guys like DeJon Stribling, he played his way out of what we could afford in the position we're in. We're in a rebuild. So instead of paying, one wide receiver or one running back big dollar bills, we need to divide that up and get 3 or 4 of them instead that need to prove themselves, that need to catapult their NIL. Now, naturally, there will be some guys from the 2025 season that do so well that then we will be back into a position of retention again in 2026. But until that time comes, the money is best served getting guys out of the portal, and that appears as though what we're doing. We've had some home runs. I mean, we're not really focusing on offense this portion, but getting Hicks from OU to add to that Lightning and Thunder packaging that we already have in the backfield. You have it with Rodney Fields and the Lightning. And of course, you have Jaden Allen Hendricks is going to help learn under the wings of Trent Howland in the Thunder package. And now you add Hicks, who's going to be a very capable, possibly even a third down running back on a regular basis. We're bringing in guys. We're not batting an eye and being super bashful about paying money per se. That's why I don't want us to get too crazy. And I don't want us to get too punch drunk on a quarterback that cost $1 million or $800,000 when we can split that up. Give the quarterbacks that we have a little bit, right? Maybe not quite Bowman level, but enough to show them you're appreciative, and spend the money all across the board on other spots. That's my 2 cents on it. We've got a lot of catching up to do, so stay hooked in, stay ready to rock and roll, and be ready for a lot of guests as well. That'll be another way we kind of get caught back up here fairly quickly. I appreciate you guys bearing with me while the computer was in the shop. It took longer than anticipated, but here we are. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, funny stuff, funky stuff. Do what you do, hit the stars, leave a review. All right, y'all. Later, my taters.